So it has been a very eventful couple of days. There's been a couple changes and a lot going on about Ellie, like outside of the actual game itself. And we're going to discuss both of these things, so let's start with the actual in-game changes. So as I told you guys last time, the 4-set, or the 2-set rather, got changed like 75 to 100% and then back to 75. It just kept getting changed around. Now, it's 20%. That's right. It's fucking useless. And the 4-set, it can now only occur once every 1 second. It basically has an internal cooldown. Not basically, it's exactly what it is. It's an internal cooldown that makes it so having dots on more than one target is also fucking useless. Really good job, Blizzard. This is exactly what we were asking for. And if anyone from Blizzard's watching, I'm being very sarcastic. This is not at all what we needed. We needed this to be stronger, not weaker. I can understand the 4-set change, because it was very, very powerful on council fights, and not very powerful on single target comparatively, but then you nerf the 2-set as well, making that really, really bad. And now we're at the point where the nerfed version of Tier 19, even with like 10 less eye levels, I don't know the exact number yet, so don't quote me on anything, but even with less eye levels is definitely going to be something that you might want to consider farming. It's definitely going to need to be tightened forward to compete with like Heroic and Mythic, but the fact that it's even a consideration is just kind of sad. And moving on from that very depressing news, the other change is actually a good one. It's the Legendary Gloves. Instead of Earthshock giving a 20% chance and Earthquake giving a 10% chance, it now says you have a 0.2% chance per Maelstrom spent to gain Ascendance for 10 seconds. So what does this change? Nothing. Basically, well, it changed a little bit, but nothing negative. Basically, Earthquake, or Earthshock rather, at 100 Maelstrom is now 20% as it was before, 25% or whatever. I can't do math, I'm not even going to try. Yeah, Earthquake is 10% as it was before, and Flame Shock and Frost Shock now have a chance to proc it as well. I did test it, and Flame Shock does in fact work. And one other thing, they haven't really gotten the coding on this thing quite right. If you spend mana... Oh, they fixed it. Never mind, I take that back. It used to be, it also procced on mana spent. It was like a bug, but they seem to have fixed that, so never mind on that. I just really wanted to show that, but dang, I was too slow. But that is the actual changes. Now let's talk about some behind-the-scenes stuff that's going on and how you guys can help get this solved. I actually forgot one change, because it was just so forgettable. Storm Elemental was buffed. I don't remember exact numbers because it's pretty much irrelevant, but basically now if you were to talent into Storm Elemental, you'd only be losing about 200 DPS as opposed to having no talent. So if you really, really like Storm Elemental, and you weren't going to use a talent anyway, you can now do it somewhat safely. So in my last video talking about Elemental and Tomb of Sargeras, I said I was considering making a thread on the forums, kind of explaining my issues. And then someone else did that, Slenderman, the guy who basically runs Storm Earth and Lava, he made a thread, and I'll link it in the description if you guys want to go support it. And we also have a thread that's been going on the class development forums, made by Falk. It's been going since April, and it kind of outlines the issue with like the AoE niche and Tier 20, and all the RNG problems and stuff. It is basically all the main issues with the spec. And I don't know if this is actually related or not, but a couple of us did tweet these threads to Lore. He's a CM that I usually agree with, and I think he's pretty good at his job. You know, he's pretty good at checking this stuff out. But in this case, I wasn't entirely content with how he replied, because he did check out the thread. And I'll just read the first sentence of the response. It said, "Hey guys, so part of the reason we haven't had much to share about Elemental is that we don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with the spec." So that's a pretty bad start. I mean, what he means by this isn't necessarily what I'm taking it as, but I think what he means by this is that, like, mechanically the spec is fine. And to an extent he's right, but he's also kind of wrong. But the problem with that is it also comes down to opinions, and he may just have a different opinion on that. But the problem is that later on he does admit that he doesn't actually play Elemental. So when he says, "we don't think," he's not really referring to himself. He's referring to Blizzard as a whole, the developers. And I like to think he did go to them and talk to them first, so I'm going to assume that's exactly what he did. He talked to them and just said, "Hey, what should I say to these people? And they told him there wasn't really anything fundamentally wrong, and that's kind of hard to agree with for me because of the RNG aspect and the whole earthquake over Earthshock thing. But she did make a point later to say that the earthquake over Earthshock is something they probably will fix, and it's a tuning issue, not a fundamental issue. But the biggest issue for me right now is the RNG. But the rest of this response is basically him saying that like the bulk of the feedback in this thread that he read seems to enjoy Elemental, which is true, and the problem is mostly through tuning, which is mostly true. And he kind of described the differences between mechanical changes and tuning changes, basically mechanical being like actually changing how the spec functions, like if they were to change how Lava Burst or Lightning Bolt or something worked like that to make it so your rotation is different. And tuning is like changing Lightning Bolt and Lava Burst now deal 10% more damage or something like that. That's basically the two differences between those terms. And now he's saying that like tuning is nowhere near complete, even though there's only 2 weeks left until the patch comes out, which is a little scary. Hopefully they hurry up because it's looking pretty grim right now. And he did say that Elemental is on the radar for the performance testing, and that changes are probably to come. So while I was very disappointed with the beginning of this post, the end does kind of bring me some hope that they are actually looking into us, and I'm really praying that he's not just saying this, because sometimes they do just say that, though I don't think they ever actually intentionally lie about it. But basically, in short, Blizzard says that they are looking at us for tuning. They don't think there's anything wrong with the spec, so I don't expect any of the RNG things to change. And they do expect some numbers to change. The one thing he couldn't explain is why nerf the 4 set and the 2 set. That's still something that baffles all of us shamans, is that why did they do that? If anything, it needed to be buffed. 75% on the 2 set was a pretty good number, because that made it so it was about equal to the nerfed version of the tier 19 4 set. Having this 4 set was about equal. And that means you wouldn't go back to farm tier 19, because there's no point. You don't really get anything out of it unless, like, I guess maybe for Mythic Plus or something, because this doesn't really benefit AoE at all. But there wouldn't be really much point, in going back and farming. But now, they nerfed it. I can't fathom why they nerfed this. It doesn't make any sense to me. And that's kind of like, that's my main question I want to ask them is like, so why did you nerf this? But I don't know. Maybe they have their reasons, I guess. I'm not really sure. And one thing I haven't actually checked yet. Come on! Storm Elemental is still 1 second compared to Fire Elemental's 2 seconds. Like, that's such a simple thing. Like, this is another thing I can't fathom is how they haven't changed that. So, to summarize, Elemental is looking pretty bad, but a community manager named Lore came in and said that we are on the radar for getting changes. And we have 2 threads, maybe more, I don't remember, I think it's 2. Either way, look in the description, there will be all the threads that are relevant. If you have anything to say about Elemental, please refrain from making a new thread and look into these threads. We also have some Reddit posts that I'll link, and basically just go add your stuff to that. Please keep it civil. Do not be like insulting devs or anything like that, or other players, because that just derails it very quickly and makes it really hard for them to find actual feedback. So just keep in mind that if you want Elemental to get better, you have to just keep it constructive and go from there. And just make sure you don't make extra threads, because otherwise you're just kind of spamming it. If you have something completely unique to what's in these threads that you want to say, then you can make a new thread. But if you're basically just adding to or confirming that you agree with what's in the thread, then just post on the current threads. If you're from Europe, I believe there has been a repost of Slenderman's thread onto the European Shaman forums or the class development forums, and obviously there's the 2 Reddit ones that European people can contribute to. So again, check the description, and yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for now. A little bit disappointing, but hopefully it improves so I don't have to be bottom DPS all the time, I guess, because I really don't want to have to. Well, I don't really have to. I really just don't want to reroll or anything. I'd much rather just stay LE, because I really enjoy LE and all that. So hopefully they can sort this out. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys next time.